Alrighty, welcome in everyone to another breaking news episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. Damian and Matt here today. We've had three moves happen so far as the winter meetings are in full effect here. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another couple moves tonight. But some major breaking news is we had Max Fried signed a 8-year, $218 million deal with the New York Yankees. We had a big trade between the Blue Jays and the Guardians. And then we saw Nathan Eovaldi return back to the Texas Rangers on a nice deal as well. So, we're going to go in chronological order. So we'll talk Fried, then the trade, then Eovaldi. But, Matt, I mean, these breaking news episodes are becoming a more of a regular thing here.
Yeah, they are. Just with it being the winter meetings going on, there's a lot of moves, a lot of wheeling and dealing going on. So definitely interesting on that. And yeah, interesting moves today for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's start at the top. Let's start with the Max Fried one. 8 years, $218 million. The Fried market was a little bit weird to begin with because I think at the beginning of the offseason, it was kind of like a lot of people expected Dodgers. Like a lot of people connected him to the Dodgers because of the hometown thing. He was in LA celebrating with players, after the World Series. And then it was like, well, maybe the Cubs had a lot of interest. That kind of seemed to be a thing right at the beginning of the offseason. Then things kind of stalled out as we were waiting for Juan Soto and stuff. But recently we had kind of heard it was a lot of the AL East. It was the Blue Jays. It was the Yankees. It was the Red Sox. A lot of people thought the Red Sox were going to be in on this. And then after the Juan Soto, decision to go to the Mets, it seemed like the Yankees and Red Sox kind of got into this de facto bidding war for Max Fried at that point. And Brian Cashman went above and beyond to make sure that he solidified Max Fried into that rotation. You're looking at our predictions going into this offseason. Matt was the low guy here, 5 years, 140. Obviously, coming from his Atlanta Braves, he's very familiar with Max Fried. David had 6 years, and I had 7 years. So I always thought like, hey, 7 years is about the thing, or 6, 7 years, so he was going to get that extra year at that point, which brought me to 7 here. But man, when you say $218 million, it's the largest guarantee ever for a left-handed pitcher in the history of baseball. But man, Matt, what did you think of this deal when it came across?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Yankees are crazy for this deal, honestly. I love Max Fried. He's a Braves legend. Started the clinching game of the World Series in 2021. So, I have a lot of love for him. He's been one of my personal favorites with the team. But, there's a pretty decent amount of red flags with Max Fried. And going forward, he's 31 years old. He over the past couple of years, he's dealt with a lot of arm issues. He's had multiple forearm strains over the last 2 years. In 2023, he only threw 77 innings. In 2024, he threw 174, but he did spend, I think, about 3 weeks on the IL with forearm issue. So anytime, and he's also a former Tommy John guy. So anytime you deal with a lot of elbow issues like he has in his career, you get a little bit concerned about signing him to a long-term deal past the age of 30. And that's what I would be concerned about here. And one other little thing is his stuff this year was still good, but the control was not quite as good, and he wasn't getting as much swing and miss as he has in the past. And I think that's something to kind of keep an eye on with him. Definitely a heavy ground ball pitcher, which is good for Yankee Stadium. But a guy gets on the wrong side of 30 and starts to lose just a little bit of swing and miss. You kind of worry about that just a little bit too. But either way, Max Fried is a fantastic player. He makes the Yankees better. I just think this is could potentially be like a massive overpay in this case. And I would have, I said 5 years before before the free agency started was the years that I predicted. I thought that there was a chance it got to 6. I had it didn't even cross my mind that it could be 8. I mean, he's gonna be 39 years old, a 39-year-old pitcher who has a history of arm trouble, getting paid like $30 million. I mean, that's recipe for a bad, that's recipe for dead money, honestly. So, um, obviously, as we've talked about so many times, the Yankees appear to be a team like some of these others that can probably eat that money. But, that being said, the Yankees last year, there was a lot of talk about payroll with them and maybe being close to their limit last year. So I'm not going to predict that this move will end up costing them future ability to get free agents, get players in, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's as unlikely as it would be for the Dodgers or the Mets in their current situations that it could cost them the ability to add to their team later on. And that's really what you worry about with bad contracts is does it actually affect you later on in the ability to add more players? So, you know, because at 38, 39 years old, there's no chance that Max Fried is still going to be a very good um, that Max Fried is still going to be a very good pitcher. There's very little chance. I mean, it's not impossible, but there's little chance that that happens. So
Yeah,
that's going to be, yeah.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
know if it's like a very little chance. Like I think there's a chance, right? Like the problem here is that a lot of the times you see the player get paid for what they've done and not what they're going to do, right? I think in this contract, I think majority of us were saying 5 years to 6 years is kind of where the sweet spot for Freed should be, right? Like that's where we think the contract should be because we still feel semi confident that at the end of that deal, at that length, he'll still be a solid pitcher, right? Now, if you're adding on the extra 2 years, say you got to seven, like I was thinking, right? Now you're getting to eight. So you've added on the 3 years from the original 5 to 6 year mark. If you're on the longer side, you've added the 2 years there. That's when you kind of get a little bit of the risk here. But this also seems like a little bit of a Yankees type of deal. They are a team that seems to like to give an extra year or two on the back end to help lower the AAV here. So I'm not shocked. Like I'm a little surprised that Max Fried got 8 years. Now, if you had told me that it was the Yankees, I think there was a possibility that I would have said 8 years, just because that's the type of thing Brian Cashman likes to do. There's two different methods to this luxury tax manipulation type stuff. There's the Yankee side, which they give out the extra years on the back end to try and lower that value, and then there's like the Dodger side, which are like we're going to defer it because that lowers the typical value now, and the upfront cash money is less, so that allows us to put more in there, but it still manipulates the salary cap at the end of the day. Um, the one thing I will say about Freed, like that gives me some like not pause, but like gives me more of an inclination that this might be an okay deal at the back end, is he's not a guy that heavily relies on strikeouts right now. Like he's under 8 strikeouts per nine at this point. He has been for a majority of his career. He's a real ground ball pitcher. Like at the end of the day, I don't think you kind of lose a lot of that. Like if this was a guy that was high fly ball, high strikeout, and then he had these issues about the forearm strains and stuff like that. Like I think that would give you more pause at the end of the day. Um, but Fried still shows that he can be a solid command pitcher and a ground ball pitcher at that point. So those guys usually age a little bit better than the high strikeout, high velocity type of pitchers. So I still think the back end is not going to be like pretty per se, but like I don't think it's going to be like a Patrick Corbin situation where he's given up a 7 ERA for the 3 years on the back end. Like I still think Fried at that point would still be able to give up like a 4-ish ERA. Like he's going to give you 5 starter type stuff in my eyes at that back end.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, like I say, just with his history of injuries plus the lack of swing and miss, I don't know. I just have a hard time. I mean, I said that the Braves I would be happy with the Braves did the 5 year 140 that I predicted. I didn't predict him to come back to the Braves, but I'd be
Right.
happy. Anything above that, I was like, I don't know about that. So,
Yeah.
um, we'll see. I don't. I think part of this is, and I don't. Part of this, in my opinion, is Cashman kicking the can down the road because he knows his job's in trouble right now.
Yeah. This definitely screams
I
like
mean,
I have to
so
make
this is
moves now.
desperation move.
Yeah.
So, because this is a massive overpay compared to just about every every single projection, every single. I mean, obviously I was the low guy on our list, but I mean, Fangraphs had him at like 5 for 140 or something, like, or 6 for 150, something like that. Like that, nobody thought he was going to get $220 million.
No.
I mean, and I
Yeah.
think that just kind of screams like Cashman is on his last leg, and it's one of the problems when you have GMs that are kind of try to fight to keep their job is they start making wild moves to help win now that
Yeah.
are wild and might not even help that much now because of the injury risk. I mean, there's a chance that Max Fried pitches 30 innings next year. He's had back-to-back years with forearm issues. I mean, this could be Rodon again. I mean, but with a lot more money involved. So hopefully it works out. I like Max Fried. I'm pulling
Yeah.
for him. I hope he comes out and does very well for the Yankees because I really like him. I think he's a great guy. He's a hero for Braves fans from that World Series. I just I just don't like this deal at all for the Yankees. I mean, I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I think we can agree it is an overpay. Like, I think we can say that. What my point was is that I see an avenue
Yeah.
where at the end of this contract, it's not as bad as what it's kind of portrayed, initially as. Like, there is an avenue where this is like a solid deal at the end of the day, right? Like that's what I'm thinking in my mind there. Um, I had a thought that I wanted to go to with this too. Oh, I think what it does is this just shows that, like, the when negotiations start happening here at the end, like when you get down to the nitty gritty here, like, man, teams are going to go above and beyond. We talked kind of about what this pitching market is looking like here. It was insane, right? I think what this does, it makes the Dodgers deal with Blake Snell look incredibly smart at this point. But it was like 5 years, 182 at that point. Really end up breaking down to like 5 at 160 once you consider in the deferrals and signing bonuses and stuff. Where, like, had Fried went before, the Snell contract would be astronomically higher than it probably was, right? Like, these are guys that are relatively the same age. I think they're like 13 months apart.
Yeah.
And Snell signed for 5 years, Fried signed for 8.
Yeah, there might be a tiny bit more risk to Snell
I don't think
because
so.
I think there's a risk with Snell of performance too. Still, I think that there's been some inconsistency with his time in San Diego. That is Max Fried for what I've mentioned his injury issues. That's definitely something that I'm concerned about with him. But Max Fried has never had a bad season, ever. I mean, his entire big league career, like his highest ERA season in his career was 2019 with a 4.02, while having a much better. That was as a rookie, while having a far better peripherals that year. And since then, his highest is this year with a 3.25 ERA. I mean, this guy's never been bad. So Blake Snell over the last 5 years has had multiple seasons where he was just okay. And I think that's kind of the difference here. I think the Yankees look at this as like, if this guy's healthy, he's an ace to go with Garrett Cole, who's also an ace. And I don't know that. And Snell, I think, is a potential ace if he can keep his consistency from this year and last year. So I think that's kind of the difference to me between the two that probably had something to do with the money. But like you mentioned, I 100% agree. I think Snell probably had a little bit of panic to him because of what happened last year, wanted to go ahead and get it done. And if they'd waited the market just a little bit, they might have gotten him more money because this still sets a new benchmark for left-handed pitching. I mean, it
Yeah.
really does because it's so insane.
Well, and it's not left-handed pitching, but what does this deal mean for Corbin Burns? I mean, I think that if you're talking that Fried's getting 8 years,
Yeah, I mean
I think
Corbin
Scott
Burns.
Boras is immediately trying to
Yeah,
push for 10 years,
yeah, Corbin.
and maybe even 250
Yeah, I was gonna say the
million.
Corbin Burns will probably get paid more, but I don't know about the years because of his age.
I mean, he
Because
just turned 30.
yeah, I doubt they're gonna give him 10 years though. I mean,
I mean,
paying him at 40.
Who thought Max Fried was going to get 8 years?
I mean, I didn't think he was gonna get 8 years, but I don't know. I'll
That's
be
what I'm
shocked
saying.
if
What
Corbin
I'm saying
Burns
is the
gets 10 years.
negotiations.
Yeah,
When the negotiations take
yeah.
over, you'd never know.
Yeah, I think the money thing is for sure. I mean, you're looking probably 250 now for him, like 8 year 250 or something, which is insane.
I think there's probably got to be at least a ninth year. Like, I don't think
Maybe.
that Boris is saying Fried got 8, that we're going to take 8. I think he's going to push for 9, and probably even at least some sort of a 10th year with like an option or something in there. Like I I, I very much think it's Boris at the end of the day. Like Boris is not going to let Fried's deal like even be close to Burns's, right? Like given the track records there.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So anyway, it's gonna be really interesting to see. I mean, we've already heard the Burns market kind of what's that gonna look like now at this point. So stay tuned on that. But okay, let's go ahead and start talking about the trade that we had happen, and it was kind of out of the blue. That the Toronto Blue Jays had acquired second baseman Andres Gimenez from the Cleveland Guardians. They are also get relief pitcher Nick Sandlin in that deal, while the Guardians get first baseman and second baseman Spencer Horowitz and outfield prospect Nick Mitchell, who was a fourth round pick from the 2024 draft. So just this last draft, he was there, 136th overall. He's 21, so he went to Indiana. But Jimenez has 5 years, almost $100 million left on his deal. He's coming off of back-to-back seasons under 100 WRC plus, but he's an all-world defender, Gold Glove caliber second baseman, a 3-time Gold Glove winner there. Even in the 2023 season where he put up a 96 WRC plus, put up 3.8 WAR. If you look at his 2022 season, it's what probably the Blue Jays are hoping they get. In 146 games there, he had a 141 WRC plus and a 6 WAR season. So it's a guy who's coming off of consistent downgrades the last couple seasons here, but a really good defender, and Toronto's hoping they can turn around his offensive side. Nick Sandlin is a solid kind of middle reliever, early reliever, I should say. Had negative WAR the last couple seasons, but he has good strikeout stuff, just walks a ton of people. So usually you don't like trading with one of these teams like the Rays, the Guardians, the Dodgers on pitching. Usually you don't end up really well there, but this is a really fascinating trade because I really like Spencer Horowitz.
Yeah, I think Spencer Horowitz is a solid player as well. Very young, um, probably a first baseman. But Cleveland is a team that needs they need batters. They need some bats right now.
Yeah.
They've got really good. They're really good defensively, regardless of who they're playing at second base. Yeah, I know Jimenez helped that a lot, but they just need more depth to that lineup because you got Quan, you got Jose Ramirez, Lane Thomas is still there. You got some good dudes, but you just don't. Beyond that, it doesn't scream like contender.
Yeah.
And I think that Spencer Horowitz can be that guy. He's a left-handed bat, which pairs pretty well. And he was very good this year in Toronto. 127 WRC plus. His plate discipline numbers were very good. An 11% walk rate and a 18% strikeout rate as a rookie, while hitting for I guess average-ish power. Um, really solid. A 360 on base percentage. So that's excellent. So I think that's a good pickup for Cleveland. I think Andres Jimenez is a fairly underrated player at this stage. I think a lot of people after he had that crazy year in 2022 where he put up a 141 WRC plus. It was aided by a very high batting average on balls in play, but he had a very good 2022. Put up 6.1 WAR in 2022. Was an MVP. I don't think he's a finalist, but he got a lot of MVP votes. So, he was excellent that year. And since then, the bat just hasn't been the same. This year, the bat was pretty rough. In 2023, he was a roughly league average bat, which to pair with his excellent elite defense, it makes him a very valuable player. But this year, the bat took another step back, an 83 WRC plus. You wonder if you can get him back to a little bit of that, 2022, type of form. Because I think he's got it in him. He's not old. He's only 26 years old. Um, and he's also, he stole 30 bases the last two years as well.
Yeah.
So, a very valuable player, even despite the really, really poor bat this year, which probably I would imagine he probably hits a little bit better than that. I don't think he's going to hit like 2022 again, but I bet he hits somewhere closer to league average than he did this year. He still put up 3 WAR. So this is a very, very good player that's probably underrated. His skill set doesn't fit exactly what everyone's looking for right now, the popular thing, but he's very good. And and then they also had the throw in of Nick Sandlin, who's kind of interesting because his ERA has been low all the last 4 years. He's had a sub 4 ERA. Um, but the peripherals have just not matched it. So is this a guy that is just a guy who outperforms his peripherals? Maybe Toronto thinks that he is and can get something out of him too, but I would imagine he's probably not a guy that just outperforms his peripherals. He's given up a lot of home runs the last couple of years, so we'll see what happens there. But definitely, I think this is a pretty good trade. I honestly think it's a pretty fair trade. Cleveland gets a guy who's a little bit cheaper right now, more control,
Get off that
lot
money.
more offensive potential. They got off the money of Andres Gimenez, who is still a very good player, and Toronto upgraded at second base, and also got a reliever that maybe is useful. We'll see about that, but um, I mean I don't hate it for either side, honestly.
Yeah, I think that I think the big part was Cleveland getting off of that $100 million
Yeah,
basically, so they could reinvest that into their team. I think Jimenez is a good player, but I don't think that he's worth $100 million at the end of the day. And Cleveland is one of those teams that has to watch their budget, routinely. So I think that's a good deal there. Toronto, I mean, they've been trying to itch to sign people, to sign players long term there, to get people to come in. Jimenez, he's going to be, slotted into that second base role. I think it helps them, especially defensively. They were not very good there defensively. Especially when you have Vlad playing first and Bichette playing shortstop. It's not the best kind
yeah,
of
that infield defense is
defense
awful.
there. And you got guys like Ernie Clement is supposed to be their starting third baseman right now. It's like Ernie Clement and Davis Schneider are kind
Yeah,
of who they're looking at there. So I think Jimenez is a really good upgrade defensively there. I wonder what this does, because the plan going in was to give Horowitz and Will Wagner some kind of run at that second base role. Obviously, that's now not going to happen. Um, so I wonder if they kind of transition to third base and maybe do something there, um, and maybe even potentially they might look to put Jimenez at third. That would be interesting. Um, he's played shortstop very well before. You might be able to move Bo, but I doubt they're going to move Bo when they're trying to do that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they think that Wagner and Schneider are better, going to be defensively at second base. If you put, you know, Jimenez, who is a Gold Glove level caliber defender, at third base. This is just me spitballing, not that anything's going to happen. It's just me thinking here that that might make a little bit more sense for them there, given the positional flexibility with Wagner and that most likely having to be a second base type of player.
yeah, it makes some sense. I don't know I don't know if Toronto's got another move in them to look at a third base option.
They
I
could.
know they've talked about, spending money this offseason. There's some third base options out there. I mean, I don't know that they haven't been rumored to be a player for Bregman at all, but
Just
I mean,
loosely,
you
just
never know.
loosely.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a definite need at third base for them now.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned those guys that you mentioned, Schneider, Wagner, Ernie Clement. I don't really think any of those guys. If you're trying to contend this year, you do not go
Yeah.
into the season with any of those guys as your starting third base option or
No.
short second base or wherever you want to play them. I mean,
Yeah.
I know Ernie Clement, was pretty decent last year, but
He's
um,
fine.
I just don't. I'm just not very high on that. I think he's more of a utility guy, and Schneider really didn't hit last year.
Yeah.
So I just I don't know. I would be I would not be surprised at all if they at least bring in somebody else for third base or second base, like you mentioned. I would assume they're probably more looking at third base at this stage
At this stage, yeah.
because Jimenez is a guy that you know his value is so tied up in the fact that he's an excellent middle infielder,
Yeah.
and moving him to third base, then what's his value? He's not going to hit like a third baseman, and the defense at third
Yeah.
base is important, but it's not as important as it is in the middle infield. So what's the point at that stage to do that? So I think if you're going to bring in somebody new into the organization, you're definitely looking at third base instead of second base.
Yeah, I'd be really interested what they do because there's been some, there's obviously third base options out there, with Bregman and potentially even Arenado if
Yeah,
he would approve a trade
another
there.
one.
Um, there's not that this would happen, but there's been some rumors that potentially Carlos Correa could get traded.
Yeah,
And if you trade for him and move him over to third base, that's an option. Like, I think there's still plenty of options for them to do there at third base. Like, if they do want to make another move, which I think you kind of have to. Like, I don't think you can kind of go in with this being your lineup there, um,
yeah.
especially defensively, um, trying to compete in that AL East. So it's going to be interesting. And I think Toronto does have a few moves left in them this offseason. So be something to watch. But let's jump over to talking about Nathan Eovaldi now, returning to the Rangers on a 3-year, $75 million deal. Did we comp him? I'm trying to think. I don't think we did him on our free agency predictions. We
Don't
did not.
don't think we did. Yeah,
Um, I think if you would have said going into the offseason, I probably would have said somewhere around the 22-ish million year a mark. I think getting 3 extra million a year, it's not bad. I think for the Rangers, this makes a ton of sense. Evaldi's performed really well for them. He's been a consistent, arm for them. He had 3.63 ERA 2 years ago, 3.8 this year, 2.4 WAR in 2023, 2.7 in 2024. I think he's really adhered himself to that rotation, to that team, to that fan base. I think he's just a great, perfect fit in there. He doesn't have to be the ace there, especially with their
yeah.
getting the
Degrom will
return
be
of,
back. Yeah,
yeah, they're getting the return of Jacob DeGrom, and he fits really well as that kind of two in that rotation there. Um, I think Eovaldi's been a really solid under the radar mid tier free agent. I think a lot of these competitive teams would have loved to have him. I know you were really kind of pushing like you would have loved him on the Braves. Um, so you think the value is about right? 3 years, 75 million.
I mean, I- I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the market because
Yeah,
if you told me before the offseason that Evaldi was getting 3 years, 75 million, I would have thought you were crazy. But with the way the market is, I mean, I don't hate it.
yeah,
I mean, it's a short deal. He's 34 years old. He's got a history of nagging injuries. I don't think he's had like major arm trouble, like potential elbow issues or anything since over the last few years, but he's had some just other nagging things. So, his highest amount of innings he's thrown is 170 this past year. It's the highest he's thrown since 2021 when he was with Boston. So, there's some injury risk, and with his age, you worry a little bit about that. And I, I I don't know. Like this is one of those teams, like we were talking about with the Yankees, and the fact that they can probably just eat bad money. Um, I don't know that the Rangers can do that or are willing to do that. I think this will be their move, and if he stays healthy, I think this is going to work out well for them because I think Eovaldi's a very good pitcher.
yeah,
But I don't know that it's gonna, I don't know that paying a 34-year-old with some injury issues 25 million a year is the best decision, even if it is a shorter deal. So I mean, unless it's like the best pitcher in baseball, which Evaldi's good, but he's not like I don't think he's an ace. I mean, he's a you know he's a very good number three, like in my opinion.
yeah.
So mid threes ERA. Um, he can come out and have really big games at times. He very rarely just gets torched. So I think he's a good solid pitcher. It's just it seems a little bit rich for him, but I mean, good for him getting that money. And I mean, with the way the market is, I don't necessarily hate it, but I probably wouldn't have paid that much.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you would have told me beginning of the year, I would have said, or beginning of the offseason, three at 60 to 65 or 66-ish million is probably where you're at. I think the bump to 75 is just because of the market. Like I said, I thought it was around the 20 to 22 a year mark.
Uh,
You got me?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry. Um, sorry, I accidentally muted my mic there. I was something in my throat. I muted it. Didn't even think about it. What I was saying is, I think that really well. He fits into this rotation really well, but it does bring the question mark of what is this it for the Rangers? Because if you look at this rotation, this is not a rotation that you feel confident in competing. You have Nathan Eovaldi and you have Jacob deGrom. It's a really good start to a rotation. The back end is John Gray, Tyler Mahle, Cody Bradford, and then Dane Dunning. Right now, Bradford, he performed really well last year. I think that he's a nice solid like 4 to 5 in a rotation. Um, John Gray and Tyler Mahle are really the two kind of question marks. Mahle has always had great stuff. First off, he's just never been able to stay healthy, and he's never been able to kind of put the stuff together. Now he's only 30. I think there's still, if Texas is able to figure him out, I think he has the potential to be a 3 in a rotation. Like, I don't think that's out of the possibility with his stuff that he's shown, if you're able to unlock that. John Gray, he's just kind of a guy who's going to give you around a 4-ish ERA every year. Like, he's going to consistently give you that. That's a back end of the rotation starter. This isn't a team that you feel can compete every single day and compete for a playoff spot and compete in the playoffs the way it's currently constructed. I feel like they need another 2 to 3-ish arm in there. And do they have an extra 70-ish million to spend again? Because you're going to have to spend about that level of kind of Nathan Eovaldi is what we're talking about here. And I'm just not sure, especially with the way the TV contracts and stuff have happened, that they have that. So unless you're going out and signing an aging veteran, like if you're bringing back Max Scherzer on a 1-year, 22 or 23, whatever $1 million deal again, because that's kind of what the market is per saying. Not that I would give him that much, but like, are you going to be able to do something? I don't know. That's the weird part with what the kind of situation Texas is in. Now, the one thing they could do is they could use Nathaniel Lowe in a trade to go trade for another starting pitcher and supplement that value either from your farm or something else.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting. I mean, I do think the Rangers need some help still, but I don't know that they don't have. I mean, DeGrom is if they're healthy, I think their pitching might be okay. It's just gonna. That's the question with them because Eovaldi hasn't stayed fully healthy for
Yeah.
seasons. DeGrom's had his well-documented issues. John Gray and Tyler Mahle's had Tommy John surgery recently. A couple of years ago, and he just came back late last season. And I mean, but if you have a big four, a top 4 in your rotation of DeGrom, Eovaldi, John Gray, and Tyler Mahle, and then you have that 5th spot reserved for prospects. Some of the because Kumar Rocker and some of
Jack
these
Leiter.
guys, Jack Leiter, they've got some prospects. So if you can reserve that 5th spot for some of that, and if it doesn't work, then maybe grab somebody. I mean, I think they'll add more depth arms.
Yeah.
But I do feel okay about their pitching, at least their starting rotation right now. I think their bullpen probably needs addressing
Yeah.
because you can't have a combination of having a little bit of a thin rotation like they have now and a bad bullpen, and they've got to address that bullpen, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
They've lost Yates and
Yeah,
Jose Leclerc out of that, and
yeah,
even David Robertson the year before that. So,
right.
um,
So that's something they've definitely got to work on, and I don't know that I would tear up their offense at all to do that though, because I mean this is a team that but probably they took a step back on offense last year, and they probably don't need to move more pieces away from that. I
yeah.
know they had some injury issues, but I definitely am. I definitely don't think that moving Nathaniel Lowe would be the best move in my opinion.
I think in their thing is he's going to be up in free agency in a couple years,
Yeah,
and they have some other guys that could potentially put in there, where if you're able to get a solid pitcher, that you missed Evan Carter for a majority of the year. Wyatt
yeah.
Langford was kind of really
Josh,
bad to
Josh,
start.
Josh Young.
Josh Jung was gone,
Yep.
so I think they have enough offense around to continue up, even if they have to trade Nathaniel Lowe for a pitcher. But the way the market is kind of developing, like, would you trade Nathaniel Lowe for a middle of the rotation arm and then just go sign a first baseman for, you know, what, 10, $15 million at that point? You're probably saving yourself money, because if you were to go sign a good pitching arm, you're going to be well over 20 something million. Like, so I don't, that's the way it kind of thinks in my eyes. I think I agree. I think they should keep him low because he's also a really good defender. But they just have question marks. And like, what are they going to do? And it's because we're in the middle of the offseason, these are the head scratching questions we have. We don't know what the final picture looks like. So it's just like what potentially could happen. And I think that they are a team that probably needs to make some more moves. And they could be, because I don't think they have the exact money, physical cash to go out there and just go get people because of the TV contract. I think it's going to have to be in more unique ways. They're going to have to figure things out.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it really comes down to.
I don't disagree with that.
So, well, that's the last of the deals that we have happened so far today. I think on the periphery, what we're looking at is Corbin Burns is probably going to go relatively, soon, as in, the next week or so, most likely. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bregman's market get going over the next couple days. Even see Christian Walker's been talked about a lot to potentially go relatively soon. So, I mean, even Garrett Crochet, there's been stuff that might happen. So a lot that's happening, especially with the winter meetings. So we're going to have a lot to talk about here moving forward. Anything you're looking at?
I mean, just surprises. I mean, you mentioned earlier the Correa thing is interesting. Potential of trading him, nobody saw Andres Gimenez coming today. Nobody saw that coming. So I think there's just probably some surprises out there that you could end up seeing. I wouldn't be shocked if Correa got moved, as you mentioned. I mean, I think the shortstop market on the free agent level is pretty weak at this stage. You've got Ha-Seong Kim, who's injured. And that's pretty much it. So I think there's more than a couple of teams that need shortstop still. So that would be an interesting one. Obviously Corbin Burns you mentioned, Garrett Crochet you mentioned. I think Luis Robert is another one to look out for when the White Sox move Crochet. I mean, I think Luis Robert's probably getting moved too. Yeah. So that's another one to keep an eye on. I don't know who else. I mean, the Cubs, there was some rumors today about Seiya Suzuki.
Yeah.
That would be a surprise, but I don't know that that's going to happen, but that would be a surprise. So
Bellinger though.
Bellinger would be a not surprise one because there's been a lot of talk about that, but I think
it could happen soon.
It could, very well could. So, I think there's a lot of moves to be had, and I'm ready for some more surprise moves. I mean, the ones we've seen so far up until today weren't necessarily surprise moves. Juan Soto to the Mets was not a huge surprise. I mean, we knew the Mets were going to be involved for Juan Soto. You talk about Snell to the Dodgers, somewhat of a surprise, but you're usually just not shocked when the Dodgers sign a top end free agent.
Yeah.
Fried to the Yankees is not that big of a surprise. We're looking for something like Carlos Correa gets traded to the Reds or something crazy. I mean, it won't be the Reds because of Ellie, but that's just an example. Or traded to the, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think there's gonna be some definite big time moves like that happen, and I'm ready for them, man. We need some WTF moments here. So
we need some uncalled for press releases.
That's right. That's hey, listen, we badly need an uncalled for press release. My Braves Twitter has been melting down today because they have literally done nothing.
Yeah.
So
to be fair, a lot of teams have done nothing so far.
That's true.
It's a lot of people haven't gone yet. There's still plenty to be done.
The Braves are going to go in the way of the Chris Sale trade last year, where they're going to get Correa and he's going to win MVP. That's how it's going to happen.
Playing? Are you going to have him play short?
Who the hell else is going to play short?
I forget.
Orlando. You think Orlando Arcia is going to play short over Correa?
I've had this baked in my mind that people were going to trade for Correa and just change in positions. Yeah, I've had this baked in my mind that for a while.
I don't know.
So I don't know why I thought that was going to happen, because I'm like, you have Riley. Like, what are you doing? Well, that's totally my thing.
They need a shortstop.
They do. Ha-Seong Kim's still out there.
I don't feel good about that, but whatever.
Yeah. All right, so just be sure to turn in, put the notifications on your YouTube, so if we go live, you don't miss it. Make sure to follow our TikTok. We post more of the breaking news stuff there, and not, the ones that we don't always go live for. You still get more information there. Matt did one on Michael Conforto. It's our best watched one so far. Don't know why that is, but has almost double the views of Juan Soto to the Mets. So that's crazy.
It's because y'all got to see my pretty face on there.
I don't know if we'd say that, but I will say you do have a fan because in our YouTube comment section right here, somebody named Raving Ron Swanson says, "Hi, Matt."
Interesting. Okay.
So
I don't know who Raving Ron Swanson is. But
you have a Ron Swanson fan.
I have a Ron Swanson fan. Okay, we'll take it.
There you go. I don't know if it's a lookalike thing or what, but someone there. All right.
I look like Ron Swanson.
He wants you to say hi back.
Hi.
There you go. All right. This thing's gone off the rails, but thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys back on either the next emergency pod or the next regular show.